Shalom, WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. This week in Shul, we'll read Parshat Miketz, the story of Joseph's ascension to the throne of Egypt, as well as the portion for Hanukkah, because we are in the middle of Hanukkah. Today is the 5th day of Hanukkah as this video comes to your inboxes. And of course, this Hanukkah marred by the terrible attacks against Jews really all over the world, especially in Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. And our thoughts are with those affected, the families of the 15 slain, as well as all those injured, and the whole community and Jews everywhere feeling devastated, feeling this anti-Jewish terrorism that has marked this Hanukkah celebration. There are no words. Now, I wanted to teach a little bit of Torah in honor of the incident. The first is a passage from Tractate Shabbat in the Babylonian Talmud, which says that we should place our Hanukkiah on the window or even outside in front of our home, that our menorah should be lit there so that it can be seen by all who can see. And it says, but b'sha'at hasakana, in the time of danger, you can move it and light it inside. Rashi gives different explanations for the time of danger, that it has to do with the religious practices in ancient Babylonia. But today, we really have that question. What does it mean to be out there as Jewish, which is exactly the idea of the Hanukkiah, that we should be doing Pirsume Nisa, publicizing to everyone that a great miracle happened for the Jews in Israel in the around 150 BCE or so during the Hanukkah story. But what about times when we don't feel comfortable being so out there? And so many public Hanukkiah lightings since what happened in Australia have been done under police protection, including the one of our town and our community that we did together with Larchmont Temple and Chabad of Larchmont Mamaroneck. And it's a little sad, but not a new story maybe for the Jewish people who have been outsiders in so many of the places we have lived. It's a privilege. For a while, have not felt like outsiders here in America, but I know we're all on our minds, or same for Australia really, that have this sense that maybe things are changing and not for the better. In the story of Joseph, when he ascends to the throne, Pharaoh does a couple of things. He dresses him up as an Egyptian. Right? That in order to be accepted as the leader, Pharaoh seems to think he needs to look like an Egyptian. And it says he even, Vayikra Paro Shem Yosef Sofnat Paneach. That Pharaoh gives Joseph a new name called Sofnat Paneach, and gave him for a wife Osnat, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Right? Gives him a religious scion, daughter of the high priest of On, an Egyptian religion, and then Joseph emerged in charge of the land of Egypt. That in order to be successful there seems to be this idea that you have to blend in. And the Kedushat Levi, the Hasidic sage who lived under persecution in Eastern Europe, he has a comment on this. And Joseph, meanwhile, and it said that the end of that pasuk, it says that Joseph ruled on all of Egypt, and it just said that Joseph, it repeats again and again. So here it says, thus Joseph emerged in charge of the land of Egypt. And in the next verse it says, Joseph traveled through all of the land of Egypt. In the previous verse it said, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all of Egypt. Why does it keep saying, all of Egypt, all of Egypt? So the Kedushat Levi has a comment on this. He says, and Joseph had already meanwhile been in Egypt. Says, we need to explain why we keep repeating Egypt. He said that it says because while Joseph had been there all that time, even without the protection or the moral clarity of his and support of his family, right? He was there all on his own, that all that time he never changed his name, right? He always remained Yosef. And now Pharaoh gives him the title Tzofnat Paneach, But he says that even though Pharaoh gave him that title, he still referred to himself as Joseph. And to justify this explanation, he brings the quote from a little further on, where it says that the Pharaoh came to Egypt and all the people cried out, and Pharaoh said to them, Lechu el Yosef asher yomar lachem ta'asu. Go to Yosef, not paneach, go to Yosef and do exactly what he tells you to do. So even Pharaoh understood that Joseph still referred to himself by Joseph, that there's some kind of fortitude as far as Kedushat Levi is concerned, that even under duress, even as an enslaved person in Potiphar's house, even in the dungeons of Pharaoh, and now here as a ruler, he always keeps his name Yosef, even if he had the opportunity to change to Tzofnat Paneach. Now, what the Kedushat Levi is commenting on, I think, is that this idea of being Jewish, being accepted in a place even as a leader, but having to blend in. What are the sacrifices we have to make for blending in? And so too, as we think about this B'sha'at HaSakana, this hour of danger, the real question of putting the Hanukkiah in the window is how much are we willing to stand out? And there's an attack on a house that was shot up, I think, in California, simply because it was decorated for Hanukkah. And, how much should we be willing to move the Hanukkiah inside? How much should we blend in? My name is Jeffrey, so it's not a Jewish name. I have a Jewish name, Moshe Tzvi, but my family chose that I should have an American name, which I keep and use to this day. But that's a choice. And these are, more than anything else, Hanukkah and the story of Joseph are sending us hints about this great question of what it means to be Jewish and not living in Israel. If we are to live in other people's places, no matter how much they feel like they are our own, and that has been greatly on display over this past week, maybe they never really are. There is one place for this people who are the Jewish people, and that is Israel. And that doesn't mean we can't live any place else. Obviously, the Talmud thinks we're going to live in other places, but it means that sometimes there will be Sha'at HaSakana, these dangerous times. And this Hanukkah has reminded us of that, maybe more than any previous one, certainly in my lifetime, that we are living in this Sha'at HaSakana, that there is danger. And I am still proudly wearing my kippah and proudly lighting my Hanukkiah in the window, and I hope that you are too. But if you're having doubts about it, I hope you also know that you are not the first or the second or the 100th or the 1,000th Jewish person living in exile, living in the diaspora, to have to ask himself those questions. And even so, here we are today, through the good times and the bad times, lighting the Hanukkah lights, remembering that miracles do happen for us, supporting each other, recognizing that we never have to live like Joseph did in Egypt, and insist on keeping our names, that there are always, where we are, other Jews around us to help support us, to help us move forward. At this moment, we really appreciate that light of community. We wish a Chanukah Sameach, Chag Urim Sameach, the Festival of Lights, a happy Festival of Lights to all, and we hope that more light is again inserted into this world, that we feel the holiness of God's light, that these terrible attacks, terrorist attacks on Jews around the world finally come to a stop. And the result of this terrible scourge of anti-Semitism, of anti-Jewish hate that has swept the world incomprehensibly, and that once again we can light the lights in the window without a second thought, that once again we can bear our Hebrew names without a second thought, that we can wear a Jewish star or a kippah without a second thought. And I say kol hakavod to all who have decided, like Joseph, to keep Yosef, and a total understanding for all of you who have questions or made other choices. and let us pray for a time when we no longer need to make those choices. And maybe that would be the greatest Hanukkah miracle since the original one over 2,000 years ago. Wish you a Chag Sameach and proudly a Shabbat Shalom.